Good morning, everyone. May I please have your attention? We're about to start. Kindly switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent, and it would be appreciated if you avoid going outside during the seminars to avoid disturbance. Thank you. My name is Aisha Sadiqa. Most of you all know me. I am the Project Research and Public Relations Manager at CPPG. Uh, I welcome you all to this seminar titled The Future of Free Media in Pakistan, from Policy Reform to Professional Empowerment. Before we proceed to the topic, I would like to introduce our panelists for today. We have with us Dr. Adil Amir. He is an associate professor in the Department of Mass Communication at FCCU, where he teaches journalism, broadcast media, and digital communication, and have also led globally connected courses with universities in the US and Japan. With nearly 20 years of experience in broadcast journalism and academia, he combines practical newsroom expertise with teaching and research in media and communication. He has worked with major Pakistani news channels, including Din News, Channel 24, Aap News, and Geo News, producing political talk shows, documentaries, and field reports such as the acclaimed Sawad, A Land of Taliban, and Sawad on a Road to Life. His work is driven by a commitment to mentorship, newsroom leadership, and research on media violence and social media networks and qualitative inquiry. Next, we have with us Mr. Faraz Saeed. Faraz is a seasoned journalist and media professional with over 8 years of experience in broadcast, print, and digital journalism. He is currently serving as chief correspondent and Pakistan Television Digital. Throughout his career, Faraz has worked with several prominent news media organizations, including Indus News, Daily Times, The Correspondent, CNN News 18, Republic, World, and Bold TV. His reporting has covered key issues such as conflict, terrorism, and Pakistan's political and economic landscape. Faraz began his professional journey at the Lahore Stock Exchange in 2013 and has since built a diverse portfolio spanning journalism and media analysis. We also have a female journalist with us who will be joining soon. So let me introduce her as well. She is Ms. Rimshay Ahmed, who is a communications and advocacy officer at Innovation for Change South Asia Hub. She is passionate about mainstreaming and amplifying South Asian perspectives on democracy, freedom, and human rights. And she has a newfound passion for artificial intelligence and migration patterns. With a background in journalism, research, and advocacy, she has successfully organized and moderated over 20 panel discussions, which includes RightsCon 22 and 25, as well as USAID Summit Democracy 2023. So that is the panel for today. We also had a fourth panelist, but he was not feeling well and he apologized that he could not attend. So, but still, we have a very interesting panel, and I hope that the discussion will be good and the students will engage with them after they speak. So, let me introduce the topic and why we have gathered here today. So, basically, we were doing a research paper which was about the media freedom and capacity building needs of journalists in Pakistan. So, in this, we were trying to ask people who have worked in the field and their issues, that how they deal with everyday challenges in their practical life, because I feel like this topic is not only now limited to the professionals in the field but also affects each and every individual present here and elsewhere as well, because the kind of information that we're consuming is through media, and it's not just limited to the professionals now but to each and every individual, because we are on the receiving end as well. So what we have found so far in this research that we have done, we have asked people, we have asked journalists, we have asked professionals in digital media and mainstream media, and female journalists. So what we found was that journalists across Pakistan consistently report operating in a climate of self-censorship driven by political pressure, undefined red lines, and fear of reprisals. Many also highlight economic vulnerability, where dependence on advertising revenue compromises editorial independence. So when I asked people that, how free you feel when you're reporting an issue, so they said that, it's not, there's a general notion among people that it's always political or the bureaucratic uh, restrictions that are there, that force us not to report something, but there are also editorial limitations as well. For example, if somebody who is sponsoring the channel, if you report story that is not in their favor, so the story gets dropped as well. So there are multiple reasons to the censorship. It's not just one or two reasons. Then a few journalists also said that some people, so when we talk about sensationalism, so they said that when they see people getting famous, when many journalists see that if Flan ne ye story break ki thi and he got viral, so then they deliberately try to make up stories. Sometimes they make fake stories to get viral and to get attention, to get famous. So that is also an issue from the side of journalists. So we have both perspectives. One is coming from the government, from the people, that this is we have restrictions, and the other one is within the organization. Then from the conflict affected regions such as KP, Balochistan, or FATA regions, press freedom is a matter of survival for them. For example, they cannot report each and everything as freely as people in Punjab might do, or people in Lahore might do, because even in Punjab, there are certain areas where you're not able to report freely. So that is one of the reasons. And when we asked some of the female journalists, so they said that first of all, there's a very small number of women journalists in Pakistan. It's approximately 5 to 10%. So the last number that I got was 5%, but I thought that it was the statistics were from 2023. So I hope that it has since increased, but not significantly still. So they talk about discrimination in workplaces just like any other workplace. The field of journalism is not left behind. They are forced to do soft beats that are considered for women. That is the kind of notion that they have in journalism, that women are supposed to do those soft beats that are for the women, as men can do each and every hard news, like reporting from the affected regions, of war regions, or political issues. So that, and obviously there is gender-based digital harassment as well. You would have seen that now anybody can comment on digital channels, on social media. So whenever a woman posts a video describing something, or a male makes a content, so the comments that follows are different. So they have to face that kind of harassment as well. And with the increase in the usage of digital media, what we need to understand is that fake news is a raging topic now, because recently during the flood season, we saw that many people were reporting videos and numbers that were not true, that were proven to be fake and false later on. So we need to make such platforms where you can double check the stories, whether everything that is proposed on social media it's true or not. And there needs to be digital literacy among the people as well. So because I believe that journalism is a very responsible profession, and with the rise in digital media and social media, anybody can come and speak anything. So it needs, that is where the future attention needs to be diverted to. So yeah, across all regions, journalists has emphasized the urgent need for legal reforms, both in mainstream and social media and digital media. So collaborative approaches with independent media organizations and government needs to be there. There needs to be digital safety, fact checking, and investigative journalism. And obviously, for their capacity building, for example, there need to be trainings, etc., that makes it better. So now I would give it to the panel, where I hope that we have brought you the practitioners who will put their experience into the recommendations for us today, describing what the actual atmosphere is like in the real world. And we would also like them to examine how the legal reform, regulation, and newsroom culture is like, and also identify some strategies for empowering journalists. So, Dr. Adil, please, if you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aisha, for such a detailed feedback on your research paper. When we talk about media freedom, it looks very fancy word, but the opposite, we actually forget about the censorship. What censorship is? We less talk about censorship. The way things are going nowadays, Um, when we talk about censorship, mostly we think that it's like a hammer. All right, it's visible. Someone is going to shut you down, right? And that happened in the past when I was working in Geo Television in 2007. Instantly, in Musharraf regime, they shut down Geo Television, and we all were on the roads. So mostly when we talk about censorship, we think that it's a visible thing, but now censorship is like a mist in current scenario. You do not see, but you feel it nowadays. So no one is going to ask you that drop this story. Believe you me, nobody. But you know that you are not supposed to do this story, or you have to drop this story. Or your manager or your news director will say, yaar isko jane de, isko na kar. Or you get something on the WhatsApp. So journalists are so sensitive nowadays that they totally understand that these are the areas, these are forbidden areas that we are not going to talk about. So that kind of censorship. I will take three examples like Mexico, Turkey, and India. So what is happening in Mexico? Non-state actors, all right, you feel you get censored by the non-state actors, and that's kind of similar thing is happening in Pakistan as well. In Turkey, state pressure, right? State pressure is sometimes visible in the shape of advertisement shutting you down, and sometimes it's invisible. And when I'm talking about state, it encompasses everything, all the apparatus. All right. And India, the third thing, which is the third phenomenon, is quite a new phenomenon: digital mobs. All right. When you do a story, there is a digital mob that is after you. All right. And especially female journalists are victim of these digital mobs. These digital mobs are run by different political parties. I mean, they have their complete and very sophisticated, I would rather say, media cells. And there are hundreds of people who are sitting on those systems, and they are actually tweeting and retweeting and sharing stuff. And with the advent of AI, you can do anything. So female journalists are more prone to not only being victimized online, but they also feel that if we actually publish or broadcast such a story about certain political party or certain power corridor, probably will be shut down or the shutdown. So this kind of censorship, I usually call it, when I was thinking about this topic, it's kind of hybrid. It's not the censorship of Musharraf, when Musharraf directly says, let's shut the geo down, and ARY shut down, and never thought about hundreds and thousands of employees working in geo. While now it's quite hybrid, it's silent and more psychological. Like, they want to make an example out of you. So we have a lot of examples. So that is the most dangerous era, what I felt, because I started my career from the print medium with the news and Jung, and later on with Geo was the launching team. I have never seen such kind of censorship. When journalists do not talk, they do not publish. The recent developments in Pakistan, I have seen eminent journalists, they are only talking between the lines. They are not directly talking on what is happening in with the constitution. What happened yesterday or 2 days back, and what will happen in coming days, nobody is talking about the repercussions. So that kind of censorship is very dangerous, and it's happening in Pakistan. So I have opened this discussion, and I do not want to actually go on this. I want to give time to other panelists as well, and I will pitch in on economic conditions of journalists and other elements we want to add. So I'll actually leave the mic at this point. All right.
Thank you, sir. Rimshe is with us now, and I would like her to start. And she will talk about women in the field, and also about censorship, harassment, and digital media.
Is this on?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rimshe Ahmed. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Officer for South Asia at Innovation for Change. And I have a background in journalism, international development, and grassroots movements. I'm really sorry that I got late. I am really sick with the viral going on. But it's a pleasure to be here to share this space with all of you. I would not go into a lot of detail for now in terms of what's happening with journalists across the country. But I think when we talk about what's happening, it's important to note that there's still very less space for female journalists in the country. We know for a fact that the numbers keep increasing, but also their retention within the media industry still remains much, much less as it should have been. And a part of it is also attributed to how most journalists are harassed. There are no policies in place. I myself have been a victim of it. And when I came forward to the higher ups or the higher management, I was offered little to no help. I was sent home for a few days, and there was no inquiry, there was no support mechanism put in place, there was no safety mechanism put in place. I still continued to work, but I quit after a few months. And that's the story of most female journalists when they come. And I was not even on the field. So imagine the kind of risks the female reporters who are on the field have to face on a daily basis. There's also this discussion that about the salaries, about their financial safety and all of those things, and that in itself is not in place right now. So these are some of the challenges that have been that are being faced by female journalists, and we've seen that no progress has been made. And again, when we talk about censorship, and when we talk about people coming forward with their own personal stories, the element of self censorship in this day and age is so huge that there are so many stories we still are unable to uncover. And this is something that has been going on for quite some time. But what we've seen in the last few years as part of my organization is the rise of citizen journalists. So we see people, anyone who has a phone can come forward, record a story, publish it anywhere. It can go viral. I'm not saying that it always goes viral, but if it does go viral, it's the story, it's the narrative that has been uncovered. But again, in those cases, are we talking about ethics? Are we talking about privacy element of recording such a video in a public space? So these are some of the elements that are still unaddressed. At I4C, we did a very interesting training of minority journalists. This was right after COVID. And we had people come from Gilgit Baltistan, we had people come from interior Sindh and Punjab. And these were citizen journalists who were looking at how their communities were being impacted. Most of them were not Sunni Muslims. They were Christian minorities, there were other religious minorities who took part in that particular training. And they came forward and they talked about what was happening in their communities with regards to vaccines. Because so when the vaccines came in, people feel like their work does not matter anymore. Their voice does not matter. So you have to build the capacity of these journalists to tell them that whatever they are doing is going to count, is going to be something that could be significant. And then when we trained those journalists, we told them to go back. We gave them tools in terms of how to edit stories, how to use Canva, how to write a basic script. And they went back into their communities, they interviewed the local people, and they produced around 50 plus stories of how vaccine distribution took place, of how employment was impacted adversely during the pandemic and the lockdown. And those stories were then on through our network sent to different news channels, different broadcasting agencies, newspapers, to highlight the segregated experience of the lockdown. So I think as someone from the development organization, we have the capacity to do that. But at the same time, I would not see a news channel or a publication coming forward and talking about these things. But what we can do together is to ensure that we are on the same page, because we have to open up the space for media to take charge, to work independently. And if we cannot urge big news channels or big media agencies, what we can do is reach out individually to journalists we think are doing important work, are unbiased, to uncover those narratives, those stories which are powerful, which need to be talked of. So I'll just pose a question to the audience. I hope that's fine. Yeah. So does anyone know the picture of the Napam girl? Know about the picture of the Napam girl? And these are all media students? No. Okay. Okay. All right. So in the Vietnam War, this photojournalist went into the field and he shot a picture of this girl who later became known as the Napam girl. And while she was fleeing her village, and her back of the body was covered in burns, and half of her body had active, like you could see that she was getting burned right now. And that picture was something that the photographer didn't anticipate that he would take. But when he took it and it went and he published it in newspapers the next day, it went again viral in the sense that it talked about how the war was impacting different people across the world, and how the cost of war in Vietnam, the human cost of war in Vietnam. And it later became part of the conversation about how to control use of chemical weapons, how to basically understand the impact that it can take if it's being deployed on a densely populated region. So, for a journalist, it's important to understand that your work makes sense. It is important. It can go a long way towards policy mechanisms. You just need the right kind of platform. You just need to reach out to the right kind of audience for that. Um, Now I'll just roll back into talking about how you also mentioned about disinformation and AI assisted tools that are being used. So again, we did a case study in Nepal when they had elections, and in those elections, what we found out was that for the first time in their history, they had a record number of female candidates coming forward and running for elections. But at the same time, what happened was through disinformation campaigns, their public stature or their personal lives were manipulated in such a way that the candidates who wanted to vote for them started thinking otherwise. And this is the kind of thing that we've also observed in Pakistan. I don't have the exact statistics for it, but in Pakistan as well, it is very easy to manipulate anyone's political campaign through disinformation campaigns, make them appear as not suitable candidates to run an Islamic country in any constituency. And so the magnitude of this also needs to be studied. And I keep saying that it needs to be done, but again, the problem is who is going to do it? Who's going to come forward and talk about media ethics? Is it going to be the government? Is it going to be news agencies? Or is it going to be academic institutions? I still believe that academic institutions have a very important role to play in starting these conversations, because you do have the youth pool, you do have the tools to build a curriculum, to build a syllabus out of these concerns, and then train the next generation of journalists and activists. Because again, what we're seeing is that in news channels, once you're hired, you're put on field and you start working, there's very little conversation, there's very little training of what ethics should be. Recently there was another controversy against Saba Kamar, who is an actress, and just because of very uncareful um, remarks by this media person, ex media person, it just completely, in my mind as well, because I'm a huge fan of her, in my mind as well, I started thinking about her in a certain way, although it does not matter about her personal choices. But this is how political propaganda works. And when we're talking about females, it can happen to female journalists on this side, and on the other side it can happen to any person who's in the limelight. And we see it in the case of social media influencers quite a lot. So, who's going to start these conversations is something that I believe the academic institutions can take place. But again, for that, we need to identify this as a pertinent problem. We cannot go around saying, oh, if a female journalist is asking for less working hours, that she's incompetent or not as able to be invested on as a male journalist, because we have to open up these spaces. Um, Aisha and I both worked at Indus News Channel, and initially we used to have, for instance, this daycare center within the building, and within a few months it was abolished. And then the female anchors who used to come just had an awful time working there. And then the males came forward and they were like, "Oh, but we've never requested for one." So it's understanding these imbalances. It's also understanding that we need to cater to voices irrespective of genders, because it is a gendered conversation, but at the same time it's about opening up the media industry, ensuring that there is greater freedom of expression, and for that we have to take all measures necessary to ensure this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rimshid. That was really insightful, and I hope the audience will have questions for that, and we can have an engaging question answer session afterwards. So now a request for us to carry on the conversation and give his point of view.
Oh, good points, Rimshi. Dr. Deal has also made some very valid points. Rimshi started off with her experience of harassment at the channel that we all work together. And it's not just about female. I was the one who raised the issue. So Rimshi told me the next day, and it was probably Ramzan. And I typed in the group of our channel that this issue has happened, and we need to do something about it. Within 30 minutes, I think it was before iftar, I was called by the MD to delete the message from the group because I raised the voice for him. And he shouted at me that what am I doing actually, and I had to delete. So one person suffered harassment, the other person was shouted down because he raised the voice. So it is, we're all victims in one way or the other. It's, I understand the challenges that female journalists face, but it's also the men likewise. Dr. Deal was right when he said that corporate oversight has been a big problem when it comes to media. um, but there is no sustainable model to survive or to sustain media at all. So it is the corporate structures which has really been making waves, and have been the life meter for media to sustain even today. But when it comes to self censorship, it's true. There were times when our editors, or our chief editor or executive editor, or the owners of channels, or owner of the newspapers used to shun us, or stop us from doing a particular story. So when I was at Daily Times, I was their business editor back in 2022 or 2021, if my memory serves me right. I was doing the story on Malik Riaz, Beria Town. And so my editor calls me and he says, you can do a story on Malik Riaz, but you can't do story on Mia Mancha, because Mia Mancha is our prime sponsor. But because Malik Riaz isn't really sending in coins, we can do story against him. And once the story gets published, of course, we'll be on his radar, and then the money will flow in, and the next story might not go and get printed. So yes, now in 2025, humans are evolving. We're all evolving as journalists, but we've evolved to a stage that we self-censor now. We don't pitch in stories which we think that might caught an establishment's eye. Matiullah Jan, a very prime example of censorship. During previous government under PTI's regime, Matiullah Jan was censored because he spoke the truth and he did not comply with the government's narrative. During Shehbaz Sharif's government, Matiullah Jan is still facing charges because apparently he covered November 9th, 11th incidents, and he have some sort of sources which claims there were casualties. So some people decided to adopt self censorship. Some people are censored. So we have an option: either we are self censored or we will be censored, and we will be put in prisons. And it's just like working in hard areas where we can be in a prison next day if we do a certain kind of story. I shared Rimshe's story here as primarily because it's not about corporate influx anymore. It's about the media bigwigs. That particular guy has been a veteran journalist, a senior journalist who's worked with the local organizations and global organizations, but he has charges of rape on him. He has charges of exploitation on him. And then eventually, when those charges were taken up, he was sort of banned, and we don't see him in media anymore. but there have been documented proofs against that particular guy, and he was not a corporate representative. He was a media bigwig. So when we have a conversation about how there's self censorship, establishment sort of runs the roost, corporate policy regulates us. It's also that the generation that has been going on working with impunity. We worked in newsrooms. All of us have worked in the same newsroom. In fact, the kind of toxicity I have witnessed is abhorrent, and it's across the board. It's not just for female journalists; it's also for male journalists. In fact, I could not imagine that my colleague, a female journalist, was made an example out of it. So new entrants could learn something out of it. So who did that? A seasoned journalist who was a senior, just because that female journalist was there before me, and that particular editor could not sort of make an example out of a male colleague because he did not accept it. But the point was, it happened. So the impunity that we work with is absolutely shocking, and it works, and it's across the board. Be it in digital media, be it in print media, be it in broadcast media. It's out there. Nobody talks about it. Plus, I've also identified one thing. Nimshe rightly pointed out that initially I also worked with at Indus News. I was at desk with Aisha also. Nimshe was perhaps an anchor, was a star anchor at Indus News. But so when we work on the newsrooms, sometimes we are shouted down. We don't know why. Sometimes we are snubbed. We don't know why. It happens both with the female journalist and male journalist because we have this culture of impunity. Now I work with PTV Digital. It's rebranded to access global audience after May 9 incident, because the state has decided to sort of control the narrative, because we basically won on the narrative ground. So the state has launched Pakistan TV, rebranding of PTV World. We have young bosses. My boss, who's the editor in chief of a state media, is 35 years old. He himself decided to have a daycare in the office. None of the female journalists said that. He decided. So it is the change of generations as well. I am sure somebody who was working in old newsrooms would not even think about of having daycares in the office. But now, in our headquarters in Islamabad, we have a daycare. We have a psychologist who's sitting there who might help those journalists who are either working on the field or working in the newsrooms. So, I think because we have a culture of impunity, we have a culture of harassment, which is acceptable. Nobody raises voice, and those who have been raising their voices, either they are shouted down, they have been fired, or they are unemployed. And we don't like unemployment at all. As far as the participation of female journalists are concerned, yes, we have less participation of female journalists. I am not sure about the number, that it's 5 to 10%. But we have Naseem Zara, we have Asma, we have so many prominent journalists who are female and who have worked in hard areas. A very dear colleague of mine, Kiran Bhatt, and then others as well. They have worked on fields in the hard areas. So because they have less participation, we see less female journalists on the ground and in hard areas. That's it. That's that. I don't think female journalists in any media organizations are denied hard stories, or they are told to do soft stories. It could be in some of the organizations, but I've seen a lot of female journalists working actually on crime stories, um, uh, working on Afghan-Pakistan border, working on India-Pakistan border, working everywhere. So I don't think they are denied such stories at all. And now that we are transitioning into digital era, I acknowledge the importance of citizen journalism. It has really changed the ecosystem and really changed how traditional media was working. But I have an issue with that. That we don't have gateways when it comes to citizen journalism. Then we don't have ethics, we don't have regulations, and so everybody thinks that they're journalists. They will put up stories. Everybody with TikTok account, Instagram account, or with the phone, they will just post up stories. Uh, then we have fake stories. Then we have stories because we need more views. So I think we, as much as citizen journalism should be accepted or appreciated, we need to have gateways always. I mean, without a professor granting us a degree, we can't have degrees distributed everywhere. So we need to have gateways. So I don't really appreciate citizen journalism at all, because TikTok, everybody's posting videos on TikTok. So not everybody is a journalist. And that also compromises our jobs as well, because again, they have more views. We traditional journalists don't have more views or accessibility, and we don't want credibility, because nobody today wants credibility. People want more views. We have senior journalists who are on YouTube now, not being employed by mainstream organizations. Imran Riaz per se, they have a lot of views, but maybe serious journalists who might be working behind the screen, they might not be paid like Imran Riaz is getting the money, the kind of money that he is. So it is also about money. Then it is also about how we are regulated, how the ecosystem is evolving, the impunity that has been there, the participation is an issue. But then again, stories are not denied. It's not as bleak, because again, I see a lot of young women coming forward, participating, being paid really well in digital media, at least because they have direct sources of income. Now channels like Hum News, they're also profitable because they're generating a lot of money through social media, because they have Hum Entertainment as well, which is doing really good. But as far as media funding is concerned, post PTI government, what we've seen is that there has been a huge influx of government ad money into media. Why shouldn't we censor ourselves then? If we are being paid on time, if we are employed, if we being paid good, the government is paying us ad money. Because during PTI government, there was the ad money from the government shrinked down. Now that they've opened up the gates, the media persons are happy. Some are dying down, but most of the organizations are flourishing. Channel 24, for obvious reasons, or Channel 42, for obvious reasons, is getting a huge chunk of government ad money. Not that they have high rating or their anchors are so big that they're attracting a lot of resources, but because we have the interior minister, we have the PCB chairman who represents Channel 24. So if the channels are getting good money now and the journalists are being paid on time, why not censorship? So media persons for 5 6 years who were unemployed, who were living a life of destituteness, who were thrown out, who did not know what to do, because after journalism, so a lot of people say that journalists are generalists, they can do everything. But once out of newsrooms, they have to struggle, because again, they have to make ends meet as well. So we are also people. We also have to run our kitchens. We also have to run our houses. We also have to. We also have needs. We also have wants. So when we are unemployed every next month, because the government is not paying good ads, or the private sector is not giving you good ads, how are we going to sustain? Because this is the only business model that we have. So self censorship is because we have state regulating, oppressing journalists, but then we also know that we will get unemployed for a very expanded period of time if we don't self censor. So we have a lot of multiple reasons contributing to our self censorship. So yeah, I think I've pretty much made my point.
Thank you for us for that different opinions on the floor.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will pick up from here. That was very interesting point for us raised that channels are earning a lot of money. Obviously, specifically you talked about Channel 24 and City 42 group because I worked for that group and I know everyone over there. Believe you me, journalists are not making money. Uh, there's a very interesting anecdote I want to share here. One of their executive producer, he met me a week back, and I asked him, "How is it going?" He said, "I got a new Honda Civic from my employer." I said, "Okay, but you are on your motorbike." He said, "I'm getting 90,000 per month. So how I'm going to afford the fuel of Honda Civic?" So I said, "You haven't got any increment?" He said, "Nothing from last 5 years." So that is the situation. Channels are earning a lot of money. Bowl Network, which is owned by the Devo Group, and 365 owned by the Sharjeel Memon, the salaries are delayed for 2 3 months. Even in Geo, there is a segregation. There are permanent employees and the contractual employees. Contractual employees get their salaries after 3 4 months. So this is the level of disparity in television channels. I'm not talking about the smaller TV channels. These are some big names, and same is the case with other television channels like Dunia TV, and they do not get yearly increment in other facilities. The main thing which is important here is which is part of this conversation as well, I can see in the topic, is the capacity building as well. So TV channels or the news media organizations are not entirely working on the capacity building of their journalists. I know Adil Shahzeb from past like 15 16 years. We did some trainings together in the UK. If he has opened a daycare in PTV, that is his exposure, his work with international organizations, and kind of person he is. All right. I know a lot of newsroom leaders who are under 35, but they do not have this kind of mindset. It's all about the exposure, training, and kind of organization, international organization you have worked for. So this is very much important. Building the capacity of the journalists. How many television channels here in Pakistan have worked for like 20 years? They arrange any mental well-being sessions for them or send them on international fellowships. I have achieved like 5 6 international fellowships at my own, not from my news organization. So journalists actually do not know, and they are unable to differentiate between what is fake news. Mostly they say that, okay, somebody has uploaded a fake story, that is a fake news. Not like that. If you go back like 5 6 years back, you remember Myanmar, the tension and all the bloodshed happening over there, how it all happened because of one algorithm glitch of Facebook. That is a very famous case study. I mean, that was not a glitch, that was a deliberate. That doesn't mean that Mark Zuckerberg was promoting violence. Facebook's algorithm picked up that violent videos, kind of violent videos, they are getting more eyeballs. So what happened? That algorithm started sharing all those violent videos on Facebook to get more eyeballs on in Myanmar. So that actually increased the violence in Myanmar against Rohingya Muslims. So this is not a fake news, but it's a technological thing, and that understanding comes from the training. So here in Pakistan, there is no training mechanism, no capacity building mechanism. Even journalists work for like 15, 16 hours in a TV channel, and at the end of the day, what they are getting peanuts. So how we can expect that they will have a better editorial judgment, better understanding of what model of television channel will work for that specific organization, and how they have to cover certain issues or events. So that capacity building is very much important in journalism.
Thank you, sir. Now, Dr. Said would like to say a few words.
Um, well, it was indeed a great pleasure to listen to these uh, experts on media in various forms and shapes. I just want to raise a few points. maybe they will help some of you, and maybe they will make some of you to think what can be done to really think about the capacity building part of it. Number one, I started my career as a journalist, but that is way back. I'm a product of 67 to 70, 67 to 69 student protest. And I saw and started my career because we lost almost a year in student protest business. And I started around 1971 as a journalist. And of course, as a journalist for the opposition newspapers, Masawat, Nusrat. Some of you may remember Punjab Punch and Sun. These were some of the newspapers which were there, lived very short time, did not go too far, but there are various reasons for that. And one of the points that you have raised is still was important then, is important even today. Never, no news organization paid journalists on time. This has been a way of life, the best newspapers as well as the worst. I mean, I can talk about Nobai Waqt, Jang, which was doing very well, all these newspapers, and of course, the other was always a problem. Second is this notion of victimhood, which journalists have, yes, and it's a very serious one and a tough one, but it's very difficult to sort of get out of it. The question is, here I want to raise for you two things. Reporting in Pakistani journalism and media is relatively new. Column writing has been the way of life. When you look at the old journalists, that is what they were doing, sitting and writing columns. And therefore, if you were to again ask yourself, Mujibur Rahman Shami, Nazir Naji, and many others, who were they and what they are today, is mind-boggling. I mean, if I were to tell you, they were struggling the way you are mentioning, the struggles were there because inadequately paid and tough life. And of course, the newsroom was always toxic. You have to think of Azad and think of how the headlines are made, half in pay. So my suggestion would be kindly go back and look at the archives of the newspapers. It's tough, it's difficult. Some of them may not be available at a time when I was doing research in 80s. One can go and see it on the microfilm. It's a different world now. So therefore, you have to ask yourself, can you really think along those lines? Now, and one can talk about, this censorship business. You are again right. In our case, even self-censorship is limited because our ethical and moral values are in a state of disarray, across. So media has a similar issue. If that is the case, there is nothing that you can really do. The question is, how do you go about changing it? And I saw personally, I was in US when 9/11 happened. You will not believe all the major news channels of American media were very quick in reporting what they had to report. And, doing away with what they did not want to report with reference to the state and what happened. And, only for a day or two, the bodies falling from the tower were shown. Then they were not again seen by anybody. So the point that I'm suggesting is that, here, the responsibility of journalists is equally important. And many a time, as journalists, we have not played the kind of responsible role that is expected out of us. And that's something which one has to sort of really think through and worry about. Now you come back to, all those old games are different and probably cannot be, repeated or replicated. What needs to be done is, in this age of social media, AI, technology, what kind of journalist you would like to be. And now there are, proper schools of media, particularly in this country also. So the question is, are they doing the role? I mean, somebody like me and many others who joined journalism, they were not adequately trained. I did my master's and that too in geography. And I was, trying to be a journalist and did work as a PRO for some time too. But then eventually landed in a university, and that is where, at way back. So 70 to 73 is a phase where one was doing this because you could not do anything else. So here too, again, one of the things is that yes, if the no job opportunities are available, this is one of the things that you do. So citizen voice or citizen, news, whatever you are saying, is something which is, if you're not doing anything, that may be the best thing to do. And there are innovations that will come out of it. So the question is, if we want to really, bring about some degree of change, A, change the nature of victimhood, B, ensure the regularity of payment. And as you very rightly said, always and every time, in every decade I have seen, governments, their advertisements have made a difference, and they really change. And this is not in this country, across the world. I mean, you are so media is in some ways in close collusion with the state, whatever the form and shape of the state is. And therefore one has to really sort of see this and then raise this question, well, how should we really go about? I mean, is it the print media? Is it the electronic media? And what do you do with social media? The states are basically interested in some form of regulation, which has led to this debate, liberty versus censorship or liberty versus security. And that is where the tough call is. So under these circumstances, one has to think in terms of, what will be the ways through which capacity building can be initiated. Unfortunately, again, here as well as in some other universities, through international collaboration, for some time we were able to see media schools and international media schools or sponsors collaborating, and some training did take place, you see. But again, it has very limited effect. So, the effort has to be, yes, if academia, government, and media, and particularly those who are motivated, like you, who or have exposure and experience, and are willing to collaborate, they can make a difference. Otherwise, social media and the AI incoming technology is really going to, in a way, sweep the electronic media and print media. It will still continue to exist, but its shape and form will change. And as I see today, I mean, I'm told most of the time that younger generation is not watching TV as much as I may watch or someone else. So if the phone has everything, and if you have Netflix to YouTube, I mean, that is where the difference is. So is this something where we should be thinking about training? Is regulatory framework the kind of framework that we need to worry about? And you implicitly refer to 27th Amendment and many other amendments that are coming in. You see, regulation is the basis. A regulatory framework is the basis for any policy to get out. You see, so now those of us who are looking at the regulatory framework, they are also focused on the personification of that regulatory framework. It is under these circumstances that you have to sort of think through that liberty versus security and censorship versus openness, and at the same time, ethical values. How should we really proceed? And can academia in some ways play a role? And if we can, how should we really go about it? And should we approach the government or someone else? Thank you. I'm sorry I just intervened. I just want you to have questions and whatever Aisha has to do.
Thank you
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now the floor is open for question, answer, and discussion. So if anybody has any question coming, yeah, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am Mehrunisa, a student of MPhil Public Policy at CPPG. First of all, we had always heard or had a vague idea of the influence or the censorship or the kind of influence that goes from the state and the self-interests that involve in reporting and everything. But having an insight from experienced experts is really interesting. Um, I would like to start with they say news is the first draft of history. And in our generation witnessed misinformation and propaganda unfold in real time during the Pakistan-India war of 2025. Also, how given that and how do you see the relationship between media freedom and public trust evolving in Pakistan's hybrid political environment, and can more freedom paradoxically increase misinformation without policy safeguards? Also, then there is the censorships of the minorities, as Saidil also mentioned, that marginalized communities face. For example, what happens in Hunza or the Gilgit-Baltistan conflicts, or the things happening in Balochistan and even in interior Sindh. Sometimes it is censored by the state or some internal factors. And then there was a thing mentioned about the social media, that social media is not really a credible or reliable platform for it, or that they have influencers, random influencers have more views and everything. So the incident of honor killing in Balochistan got viral or got attention due to a social media video from that same community. But it was raised voice by the NGOs and everything. But it garnered attention due to that video. So, do you think the laws like China recently introduced on social media platforms, that without a license, that certain person cannot talk about some sensitive issues, and the social media platforms would be fined on that, and those personalities as well, if they're talking about some issues without their license or things like that? Do you think that can help in catering to that? And could last question, could decentralization of media regulation, for instance, the provincial level independent commissions, strengthen the accountability and reduce political interference in the media industry? Thank you. That's all.
There were so many questions, but I think I'll take your China part. China should be the last example to be quoted in regulating media. They don't have WhatsApp, they don't have Facebook, they have their own versions. Um, so practically, there are no journalists in China, and it is overly regulated. And the kind of censorship that is applied in China is abhorrent. I was so like we have Safe City project here in Pakistan. China has similar system in their cities as well, where they can identify faces as well. And I think just last year we faced this firewall issue where our social media wasn't working well. We borrowed that system from China. We had firewalls downloaded in our systems, which initially slowed down our systems. But now we can't access certain information, access certain news websites, access, or when we upload, that firewall will detect and you'll not be seen around. So I think China should be the last example. But as far as policy is concerned, so it's nice to talk about policy in boardrooms. But when it comes to the applicability of policy, we have very good policy frameworks enshrined in our constitutions and enshrined in our big fat policy books. But applicability is an issue. We have so many unions representing media, but where are those media organizations when one of our senior colleague is killed in another country? We have so many unions of media. Good policy frameworks are there. Good policy frameworks are there on the federal and provincial levels. But when journalists are butchered and maimed and tortured in Islamabad, how can we raise a journalist's voice from Hunza or Balochistan when even Islamabad is not safe for journalists? I quoted Matiullah Jan earlier. He's the prime case that a journalist practicing journalism in Islamabad is picked up, is harassed, is maimed, and it is documented by every state, by every state government which comes in. Be it when they're in the opposition, they sort of go to such journalists for increasing their vote bank. Asatur was a prime example. During PTI's government, Asatur practices journalism in Islamabad. During PTI government, some armed people barges in his home, attacks him. He almost breaks his bones. The opposition goes, consoles him, talks against the government. This opposition comes to the government, uh, and he still faces the same kind of censorship. He's still harassed. He's still imprisoned. He has more charges on him. So even if we have policy frameworks, we already those policy frameworks already exist. What is something new that we can do beyond policy frameworks is the applicability of policy frameworks. For instance, we have policy, provincial government has passed these laws on safety of women, workplace, anti-workplace harassment laws. But where is the applicability? We are all conforming to the traditional practices that have been going on. So when there is harassment in an office and your boss is the one who's harassing a female employee or even a male employee, who is going to report? Nobody's going to report. And we've seen so many cases on social media where people are complaining about harassment, but unless or until there is no applicability of the law, working on policy frameworks is not going to deliver anything at all. I mean, if the panelist can disagree with me.
This is absolutely right. I worked in the US as well, and the unions in the US, unions of the journalists, they are so powerful that they decide everything, your extra hours, how much you will get paid, how many vacations you will have, and everything. Here in Pakistan, we have Federal Union of Journalists, we have press clubs. Policies are there, but there is no implementation. I mean, they have the medical and the insurance policies with the press club. If a journalist passes away in an accident or when his boots are on, he'll get something. But how many journalists got that insurance money? Never. So implementation is the problem in Pakistan. Policies are there, but implementation is the problem. So as far as your question is concerned about the social media and the journalists, we have started at FC College a very good initiative, which is MIL, Media Information Literacy Program. I am actually running that program. So recently we had a session on that as well. So journalists as well and the common people who use social media, they should have media. They should be media literate. They should know how to spot a fake information, disinformation, misinformation, and they should be trained on that. This is the need of the hour. So this subject should be taught in universities as well, that when you leave university, no matter whether you are a journalist or not, you must know how to which information is credible, how to detect the source, all right, how to understand that this picture or video is not manipulated, all right. So that these are very important elements, and academia can play an important role in this.
To Faraz's question of implementation, I think it's a much deeper issue. It's a cultural issue. Cultural issue in the sense that, what kind of attitude do we have? And how do we change that attitude? That's why when I talk about capacity building or hear from you about capacity building, this element has to be recognized that there are serious, handicaps in our culture, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we present ourselves to the outside, and when it's a question of really doing something. You see, and you referred to a number of instances and offices, and one can go on and sort of identify more cases in that direction. So the question is, to what degree are we willing to reflect and ask ourselves that there are some structural problems which cannot be changed very quickly, but then there are some cultural problems where it's a question of can we make people rethink, can we make them have a sense of responsibility, can we ask them that look, what you're doing is not really right. And you have more than once said that if your boss doesn't discriminate between man and woman and still does things which is again cultural. So it's something which is time consuming, but has more to do with education, not with skills. But for that, people are not really ready because culture is seen as tied to religion. So you have to really at times sort of segregate the two and recognize that there are certain limitations which we have inherited, and we need to really bring about changes. And as Dr. Adil was rightly pointing out, that once you get some outside exposure, some change in your attitude and orientation does begin to occur. But can we make it sustainable? Can we deliver a similar kind of training which we get from outside and we adapt? But can we really sort of make a sustainable effort here? That is the kind of challenge that we have. And, one would like to sort of hear how should we really move forward and do something. I've provoked Dr. Rabia. Let's hear her.
So you haven't provoked me. I've been wanting to ask the question for a while, and I want to ask all of you this question because this covers a sort of a diverse. This includes you as well, sir. So, as I understand, and this is something that I've been thinking through for a while, that when Trump, and I'm sorry that we can't have a conversation without Trump and AI anymore. I mean, those are the times we're living in now, right? So when in 2016 Trump 17 inauguration takes place and he starts giving that speech famously, um, all your major news channels started stopping live broadcast because he was telling so many, for a lack of a better term, falsehoods one after the other, that they couldn't fact check him while he was live on air. So they stopped broadcasting it live because with a sort of an apology saying, okay, we're really very sorry that we are not broadcasting it live at the moment but we are having difficulty fact checking it and keeping it up. So we're just sort of telling you as we are sort of वो picture दिखा रहे थे उन्होंने आवाज बंद कर दी थी उस वक्त उसकी, if I remember it correctly. But on the other hand, the solution to that is now you have TikTokers and Instagram people in the Rose Garden. They are very much a part of. I mean, they get to ask a question before the BBC or the CNN guy gets to ask a question. So my question is, having said that, every time there is a new piece of technology, every time there is a new way of dissemination, this happens. Something new comes up, but then it takes us a while to figure out, okay, but then there needs to be some sort of a regulation. Then we get together, the printing press comes along, we say, oh, okay, this can replicate things much quicker. We need to figure out there has to be some sort of editorial. The newspaper comes around, we develop journalistic rules around that. So my question around that being very much that, do you think that given that internet is very much the space which is owned by we the people, those rules will ever come in? There was some hope when Zuckerberg apologized, but now they seem to have sort of bended the knee as well when the tech bros sat down in a line and this time around earlier this year. So, I mean, what do you see some kind of a regulation for this new media coming up, or do you feel now we've reached a new point?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. So, you have to understand that internet is a place that we populate, but we do not own the space. It is owned by multinational corporations who are running the technology policies, and they have access to your data. And this is how they are feeding it into AI machine learning, and you have algorithmic. Um, you don't even have algorithmic agency anymore. So whatever you're seeing is being manipulated, is being sent to a particular person in Pakistan to view it in a certain way. And I think President Trump's election in his first time around was a sort of a trial run to see how much data could be manipulated, to the extent that you had someone like Trump win the elections in the US, and then again happened this time around as well. So understanding that now is then moving forward, because initially what we used to say was that oil is the currency to dominate the world. Now it's data, it's who you are. So if I'm a journalist from Pakistan and I'm tweeting something about my country, or I'm tweeting something about authoritarianism, or how media is not free in my country, that in itself is data which is being fed into a larger data set. And through that, I'm being surveilled, my activities are surveilled. If I travel right now, and I just returned from this ICSW by Civicus in Bangkok, the conversation was around AI, but the risks associated with it, we still don't know the magnitude of risks. Hmm. Yeah, so I'm just coming to. Yes. Yes. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of data is being collected, but at the end of the day, who is going to hold these multinational corporations accountable? We we can lobby for support amongst ourselves. We can say that, oh, for instance, this is a threat, this is a risk that we have to acknowledge while we use social media apps or while we are on the internet. But at the same time, we do not know the magnitude of the risk. We have some evidence. So for instance, I have worked with the Afghan refugees as well, who after the Taliban regime takeover, they came to Pakistan, and how they were being tracked. We have evidence that as soon as they cross the border to Afghanistan, they are tapped into a system, and then once they travel to a country like the US or EU, when they get asylum, they they are fed into a data set, and throughout their life they are being monitored. So it's not like a free movement anymore. And this is again not just for refugees. In the last 4 years, we've seen that for journalists, we had evidence from two Balochistan activists who protested against the enforced disappearances. They fled to Canada, they were given asylum, but within weeks they were killed, and there was no investigation. So, the authorities should have, the people should have urged the authorities to look into that matter, which a lot of people didn't do, again because of security reasons. But in the long run, we know that these cases have happened. So, building on these cases, we need to lobby for support internationally. And to start off with that, we need to first do it within our countries to create an understanding of what's happening, then regionally, then internationally. And only then can we develop some sort of framework. But again, the pace of development for these technologies is so fast, and our understanding of the risks associated is still not coping up with the speed of innovation, because of which we will, for the longest period of time, be at odds into creating any kind of framework. Because if we create a framework for surveillance and movement, but then we don't know the next thing that's happening. But still, we need to advocate for it. We need to build our policy mechanisms. We need to strengthen our policy mechanisms. In India, there's a lot of conversation happening. In Pakistan, there's none. In India, they've set up even government units to understand what's happening, to understand. They have technologists on board, they have journalists on board. But in Pakistan, no such action has taken place yet. And I think, yeah. Yeah. No, I understand, but I'm talking about the AI mechanisms, Yeah. No, that I understand, but what I'm trying to say is that in terms of holding, accountable the corporations for the use of AI and how disinformation or misinformation is spreading, for that we are still at odds. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
If I can add, so you said Mark Zuckerberg apologizing was a ray of hope, but then Mark Zuckerberg stood behind Trump in his inauguration. Elon Musk joined Trump to win this race and then he left. So there was a state during the election where internet was down. So Elon Musk satellites went there to provide internet access, so Trump and his party could win the election in that particular state. So I think when we talk about censorship or regulation, we've seen big tech in cahoots with these politicians who might be horrible. They are in tandem with each other. So when we saw inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump, we saw Mark Zuckerberg, we saw Elon Musk, we saw Amazon's CEO. They all came to the new emperor to pay homage, and that's been happening. So even when Trump flies to Middle East, the Middle Eastern governments also pay homage to Trump by offering about $3 trillion worth of investment and some gifts as big as Boeing to Trump. So I mean, wherever there is, so people bow down or have started to bow down to an area where power lies. So Middle East is bowing down to Trump because power lies there. Big tech is bowing down to the White House because that's where the power lies, and he is exercising that power as an emperor. So now we know that democracy, which has given us big democratic presidents in the White House, it is finally showing us the reality that we actually have the emperors who are sitting in the White House being elected by the Americans, so-called election. Um, we know Cambridge Analytica was one of the famous case where the entire election was rigged because how data worked, how Facebook's data was, our data was given to a certain political party, and then that data was used to win election or run certain ads. Even in our country, what we see is we see certain ads because that's what we are consuming, and algorithms work in a certain way. So, huh? I work with the state media. I can't. I can't speak about.
We are just on the receiving end. I mean, it doesn't matter. You see, the debate, as you are pointing out, you see, in US, the debate is already on that, basically, should we really democratize AI? I'm in favor of that. Esmeglo and many others are making a case that, look, if it is confined to few companies, then that is what is likely to happen. So can we really make sure that its ownerships change? It's easier said than done. But that is the part which is more critical. And again, algorithms are important, but in our case, the nature is much more different, as we are simply on the receiving end. And you look at our regulations. I mean, the regulations will come and they will more and more focus on security and state, and they will favor it. And therefore, this enterprise that it is individual and capital owned is not there. So if I was to listen to you, you are not happy with the capitalist democracy, nor are you happy with the communist authoritarian system. So the where is the way out? We have a military hegemonic system, whatever and howsoever people may want to call it. But that's not the issue. The issue is, what are some of the ways through which we can possibly move? I mean, the reality is that, yes, the state is going to be increasingly powerful in terms of really able to connect, as you rightly said, the big data. You see, so if they are able to get the big data, it's not the others who are going to have it. So under these circumstances, again, you have to ask this fundamental question: can you bring about some degree of change in your values? In America, as a consequence of Trump's rise, the value structure has changed. You see, and it is globally now that might is right, and therefore what do you do now? Recently, somebody sent me an article by Harari on moral certainty. You see, on moral certainty that yes, the moral certainty should be seen like moral equivalence, that Israel and Hamas or the Palestinians are basically fighting a war, and both are claiming on moral basis that they are right. You see, and therefore it's going to be unending. there's no comparison between the two. One is so weak, the other is so strong. So this is something which we have to really recognize, that we have to really sort of partly deal and work in circumstances where you have to focus on your own problems and seek solutions there. So coming back to the basic theme, that if we want to improve the quality of media persons, Dr. Adil mentioned one of his initiatives. The other was, seeking support from outside. But if we want to do it on our own, what should we really, how should we really be proceeding? Should we bring the journalists and media here? Should we go to the government? Ask yourself. There was a time when information ministry was very important. Now it is ISPR. So you have to sort of really, who abdicated what? You see, that is where the issue is. I mean, can political parties organize themselves? Can we sort of educate or involve them to, look at some of these things and make laws which will help the ordinary citizen? That's the challenge. And it's unfortunately not easy. But again, as I repeat, comes back to culture. And unless you began to really critically examine some of the weaknesses and strengths of your culture, only then you can move forward, not otherwise. If you say honesty is the best policy and act the worst way, there's nobody who can help you. I mean, this is where we are at this stage. And unless we get out of it, I'm afraid we will continue to swim the same pool. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so, sir, let's take 3 consecutive questions, but please be precise in your questions. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 collectively, and then the panel will answer collectively your answers.
So my name is Sara, and my question is that when we talk about censorship, so this idea comes in certain dimensions. There is a kind of censorship which state has to approve of in order to maintain discipline or things in matter. That is my understanding. And then there is one kind of censorship where several facts are being concealed in order to gain certain benefits. So I think that these kind of censorships need to be dealt with different or in completely different ways, because in Pakistan, when we talk about censorship, we have a very serious problem of journalists not only not being able to cover certain stories, but also censorship at the cost of human lives, or basically censorship at the cost of security of these people. So how do you think that we can address this issue in the existing political scenario in Pakistan, or if it's possible to address it here?
Yes, my name is Mohammad Zubair, and my question is like shifting narratives. As ma'am mentioned that picture Napalm girl, and later on that was like back in 1973. Now it's like 2024 or 2025. The narratives are being changed on a bigger scale. Like that was a kind of a key picture to end the war in Vietnam. Now there is no audacity of Palestinian kids that has been like shown here and there, and nobody is like talking with that audacity. The war is not coming to at any end, and later on.
Hi everyone. This is yeah. I just wanted to, since we're talking about the media censorship and the policy reforms, I was just wondering that we often hear that this is a matter of national security. We cannot discuss this on media. I mean, changes into the Article 243 being the latest example. So, in your view, how we should reform our media laws in a way that it doesn't compromise the media freedom as well as it doesn't uh, or it maintains that national interest. Secondly, one of the honorable guests he mentioned that we have big fat laws, but there is an issue of applicability. What can we do to ensure this applicability? Thank you.
Thank you. Which one of you would like to answer the first question? Okay,
I
Faraz.
understand. Um, so, shifting narratives. I think uh, after 2008, um, when the bombing started, even Lahore witnessed huge bomb blasts. FAA building is still, alive in the memory when the entire city was, shook. We've started to become desensitized to bombings. So we still have bomb attacks, but if 10 people are dead, 20 are dead, it is not a big story. But if we go back to 2008, when war on terror was in an initial phase, even one person who was dying, 10 people were dying, was a big story. Similarly, when there was even a smaller blast, stock market used to crash. Now we have Afghan Pakistan, border tensions. We have India Pakistan border tensions. Nothing is really happening on the stock market. So we've basically become desensitized to these events. So when you said, that Vietnam picture impacted the Americans or the West, and that eventually stopped war, and we see so many horrifying pictures from Gaza, and that could not convince the West to stop war because we've become desensitized. We've seen so much blood, so many mutilated bodies, home and abroad, that we can only talk about it, and that's it. So the idea is that we've become desensitized. Unless or until there's a big event that takes place, we won't really be moved. As far as narrative picking is concerned, I always propose that we need to have subject expert on in media. We've had media graduates coming to media, print, multimedia, broadcast. But the idea is, if we don't have subject experts, we won't really be able to explain the entire story. So, I mean, that's an example that I generally use. So, our top of the top economists sitting in GHQ, generally, not in Ministry of Finance. During PTI's government, um, and now when we talk about our army chiefs, or the corps commanders, we think that they are the best of best because they know everything. They know how politics should work, they know how the government should work, they know how real estate should work, they know how media should work, because they're experts and jack of all. So General Bajwa, when he was the army chief, and Hafiz Pasha when he was the Ministry of Finance, in one of the meeting, General Bajwa said that we need more money for defense. And Hafiz Pasha said that we don't have more money. So General Bajwa said we print more money. And we thought that army chief is an expert on economy, is an expert on real estate. But the same army chief demanded the finance minister to print more money to, create space for defense budget. And then Hafiz Pasha says that I scolded the army chief. That's not how it works, because even if you have more money coming in, it will create more inflation. It is basic economic concept. So when we talk about narratives, we don't have subject experts. even in media. So if we don't have subject experts there, in media we don't have subject experts. They're mostly they're specialized in English language or media. That's it. We don't have economists. We don't have policy experts, public policy. I think public policy can contribute greatly to media. I think rather than having media graduates coming to media, we need to have public policy graduates coming to media, because they understand the very the very context of how policy should be comprehended, or the right questions to ask to the right people. Sometimes it's so insulting to see that top journalists asking the dumbest of the questions to the politicians. We have top journalists who do not have any idea how economy works, but when it's the budget, they run 24/7 shows talking about budget. We have this top journalist who works at ARY News 10 p.m. show. I would not name him. I think now he's in Islamabad working. He used to work in Karachi. Now he works in Islamabad. He also hosts that show with the public interaction one. He in one of his shows said, "Let's print more money. We'll have more money, and then we'll have a greater budget." If that is the scale of subject experts in media, then I'm sure we're never going to have a good debate. Initially, Dr. Deal pointed out rightly that the kind of debates that we're having at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. shows, it is fruitless. So we need to have subject experts. We need to have the right people. We need to have public policy experts.
So I will answer the question about the narrative building through media. Just to quickly add to what Faraz has already mentioned. So there's one thing that we've become desensitized to, for instance, what's happening in Gaza, but at the same time, it is important to keep these conversations going. Gaza is a much complicated issue. To have an entire nation broadcast what is being done to them for 2 years, they have the internet connection to talk about what's happening. So it is part of a greater plan from the oppressors. But at the same time, we can't say that media does not have that kind of power anymore. If you remember, a few years ago there was this Gwadar Ko Hak Do movement which lasted for about a month. There was no internet connection throughout the Gwadar belt where this protest was being held. But a journalist from Karachi heard of it, went to the place, started recording on his phone, and through him we got to know that this protest was taking place, right? So these people did not, they had the tools, they had their phones, but they did not have the internet connectivity to basically sort of stream what their protest was. Eventually, when that journalist started picking up, more journalists went. Eventually it was something that Geo was also talking about. We had a few articles in Dawn. Though the movement was suppressed, they were harassed. They were told that if they didn't back down, they would be killed in certain circumstances. But the idea is that these voices exist in different pockets throughout the world. It's just a matter of it being picked up, it having that kind of influence. Secondly, I think we talk about censorship in Pakistan, or we talk about media ethics as if Pakistan is a very democratically strong country, as if we have the structures, the political appetite. With each government, we have different set of policies. We have a different set of priorities. So for instance, the Right to Information Act, it exists on paper. There's a whole mechanism, but there's not a single body for implementation in Punjab. In Sindh, they've worked on it. In KP, they've worked on it. But in Punjab, there's still no person who's leading the front. And a few weeks ago, me, a couple of other journalists went with CPDI to the governor of Punjab, and we requested that, you need to implement the Right to Information Act, and there needs to be a person. And they were like, oh, just write to us and, let us know exactly what you want. And we did, and nothing happened. And so again, if we go another time, it will be the same conversation. Why? Because the government does not really care about it right now. But if you go and you talk to them about something related to the military, or if I publish an article saying anything against the military, I will get instant reaction from the state. Why? Because their priorities are different right now. And that only happens in a weak democratic system, which again is the case of Pakistan.
A quick comment about your question on censorship, and you talked about national interests. So, what I believe, there should be discourse on public forum. What is national interest? It's a very big term that encompasses a lot of stuff in it. But I believe there is national interest versus public interest, because media is a public space. So how we can serve the public interest as well? Because what is happening now in Pakistan, because it's badly needed, the democratization of media, that this is the public interest and there should be discourse, there should be academic discussion on these areas. So until and unless this sense will prevail, we won't be able to actually talk on these issues. And for that, editorial surveillance is very much important. A very short story I want to share here. Recently, BBC's director general and CEO resigned. This is today's news. And what happened, that the Telegraph actually published a story on how they actually manipulated Donald Trump's speech in 2021, when there was a protest going on Capitol Hill. So both of these high profile persons in BBC, they resigned on this, and that happened in their top program, which is called Panorama, and that program is running from last 30, 35, 40 years. So that is the thing. I mean, media democratization, editorial surveillance, and editorial judgment is very much important here in a country like Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we should wind it up here. I would request Dr. Said to please conclude it, and then
Yeah, no, I think it was a very stimulating discussion, and many very important points were raised. But I do want you to sort of really go back and think about a few questions. Number one, do we have a national narrative? Do we need a national narrative? What is, what is it that Pakistan should be to the world? What is Pakistan to you? Can you really portray what you think Pakistan ought to be? I mean, there is no censorship on that, but that's something which one has to sort of really ask oneself. Second, as we spoke quite a bit about what can be done to really improve not only the conditions of the journalists or media persons, but also the skills of media persons. So in that sense, can you have some ideas whereby we can really focus around those and really work in that area? Number three is the issue of technology. And please always remember that we are not a technology producing society. We are a technology consuming society. And therefore, we will always be sort of on the receiving end. And that receiving end means that, we should be able to use it more effectively and for the common good of people, which is again one of the serious challenges. So data will be accumulated, state will get more confident, and state will also be at times and places more repressive. The question that one has is, do we have other platforms which you can strengthen? And can media be one of the platforms through which you can really move? Last and finally, there is always this emphasis on academia to play a role. Academia has a very limited role in this country, and its voice is also not adequately heard. But it doesn't mean that academia should not do anything. So here, once again, some of these ideas which came out, mostly in the form of challenges. But how do we convert those challenges into opportunities and really prepare ourselves for a better tomorrow? And as was partly mentioned, that there is a generational change, and that one should really keep a hope on that generational change And we need to identify more individuals who are like that 10, 35-year-old and really sort of built around it and see if one can really move around and make things better. So thank you so much for being here. It has been enlightening and a rewarding experience. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Aisha, for having me.
Thank
And
you, sir,
thanks
for
to you.
agreeing to come and contributing so well. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Adil. I know you have to leave early, but thank you for staying with us. Thank you, Remshe. Thank you, Faraz, for coming on such short notice. We have a small token of thank you for you guys from CPPG, a souvenir. I would request Dr. Singh to please present it to our guest speakers. Thank you. So, Sir Adil, please. And everybody, please give them a huge round of applause for such a enlightening debate on, yeah, great session.
I am not the compliant one. Despite the fact that I work with students here, I'm a very